groups, but also this requires a certain amount of true leadership by you as an elected official, by you as a candidate. And you have to have the discernment to understand when it's bullshit, when it's right, and when, who knows, you're gonna have to just roll the dice. And you know, you're going to end up being, at the start of this, more wrong than right a lot of times, but you learn from that. And if you look at how the other side operates, they're not afraid to mess up. They mess up all the time. Heck, I've seen them mess up in like a day a couple times, and they're moving on, right? The leadership of the Democratic Party, you as an individual leader, need to be really willing to take risks, make decisions, execute on decisions, retreat when you have to, and then attack again. That's it. Do that over and over again, and you win elections. The worst thing you could do, which I saw during his last election, was a couple people mess up, you know, whether it was the vice president, a couple other statewide office seekers all over the country, and all of a sudden you just see them go silent for a week or two and let the narrative just kind of take away, versus just going back out there, attacking the message, pushing your strong message, and just, you know, showing that you have energy to move on. And if you can do that, you're gonna be on a better footing than trying to figure out like the Six Sigma process about how you're going to make decisions as information comes in.
Speaking of the opposition, I'd be curious. So, if we're thinking about stories, the left and right stories have heroes and villains. On the right, it's, you know, the elites. On the left, it's like the oligarchs. So, something I'd be curious about is, to what degree do you think those stories are right or wrong? Or actually, I know the ways you think those stories are wrong, but is there anything in the way that you hear the populist left and right talk about politics that resonates with you in a way that like doesn't suggest you have to just buy into all of like their conclusions?
Yeah, I think actually when they're talking about the juxtaposition of you versus elites or the oligarchs, it actually is very powerful. And the reason I think that is powerful is because if you look at just what people are dealing with right now, it's not just an economic issue to them, it's an emotional issue. They feel emotionally hurt that they're not succeeding. When I was campaigning, I heard a Latino man tell me this, like, I don't know what else I can do. I've taken on other jobs, I've cut everywhere else I can, like, I feel like I'm failing my family. That, to me, told me that this was a bad situation. Because any Latino man can always believes that they can either work more, work harder, or, you know, cut somewhere else enough to like provide for their family, right? That was an emotional problem. If I go to that gentleman and I say, the elites are screwing you because you used to be able to get higher wages, they're not paying their taxes and they're screwing you, or the oligarchs, you know, are hoarding all the money and they're screwing you, they're gonna respond to it, whether I say elite or oligarchs, right? Because for them, it is an emotional resolution to why they feel that they're failing. And also because they're comparing themselves to a lot of other people, other men, you know, their fathers, their grandfathers who had houses, had jobs, had a stable relationship, were able to provide for their family. And now the question is, is it you that you're the problem, or is it somebody else? A lot of times and I say on the Democrat side, we're afraid of saying it's someone else's problem until recently. And the Republicans have been very good about saying that it's someone else's problem that's causing this for quite a while. You know, in the 80s it was black people on welfare. In the 90s it was gays, black people on welfare. In the 2000 it was Latino immigrants, black people on welfare, and gays, right? Like, they know how to make other people, and now they moved on to those three plus elites, right? Democrats are kind of finally getting around to that circle with oligarchs, because finally there's a really good example. Elon Musk is a really good enemy, right? And it's easy for the everyday American to understand what's happening right there. So the narrative is good. Now, I'm always of the approach and belief that it's easy to scare somebody, you also have to inspire somebody, right? And we have to give that grander vision about how we're going to take both the power away from these people, but also empower you, right? What are you gonna get if you elect me versus what you're gonna get when you elect them? And when we talk about this, like one of the campaign commercials I did, the first campaign commercial I did, we actually talked about how bad things were. So we didn't deny it, right? This is in April or May, Chris, is that right? I think it was April or May. So we went on this commercial, and it's just me to camera, and we're talking about how bad things were. The price of this, price of that, and how much it sucks. And one of the things that we did a last-minute edit to is that we put in the I think were very key words, and this is not your fault. Because what I wanted to communicate to that voter is that everything that's happening right here is because government has failed you. And it's government at that point was the Biden administration. Government has failed you, and this is not your fault. You've done everything right, right? We're the ones that messed up. What did that do? That gave an opportunity for them to just breathe a little, open up a little, and actually look at somebody like me and say, that guy understands me, right? Because right now, at that point, nobody, in my area, in Arizona, people felt that nobody was understanding what they were going through, and they knew it was rough, and they knew it wasn't going to be easy. They just wanted someone to care enough, and we did that, right? I think Democrats can do that. You can do that while also ostracizing these very scary people, but you have to take it to the next level. You have to give them something to also want to fight for, because it's very easy to be depressed. I've been in some of the worst situations that a lot of humans can be. It's very easy to be depressed. It's very easy to just crawl away. It is a lot more motivational if you have someone that's willing to drag you out and pull you out and actually encourage you to go and fight another day. When Democrats do that, we win. Clinton, Obama. When we don't, then it's bad situations that come up.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. Yeah, on time. Here we go.
Please welcome to the stage Liam Kerr.
Nope. Oh. All right. Year 5, we'll get the button. So what do we think about hiring a bunch of senators' friends and former staffers to make it hard for them to say normal things? Good, bad? Bad. And who do we think was paying those people? Working class, everyday America. Who was paying those people, right? Big, progressive, institutional donors. And so some of that narrative that he liked there, some of that, Bernie and company are very good at a lot of things, and they start with the oligarchy. And we'll get into this in a little bit. You know who was paying for the people to rush the stage last year? The oligarchy, right? That's a problem all over. But before we get into that, reminder, in everybody's email, new thing this year, presidential straw poll. So when you checked in, you got an email with a link. Only people who are physically here can participate, but up to 3 votes. And so, I'm up here. I'd rather you look at your phones and think about 2028. So please, everybody, remember to do that. So, last year we had a good time. A lot of interesting stuff, a lot of excitement, a lot of enthusiasm. But there were 3 critiques. Marshall touched on one of them just now, the story critique, that centrists do not naturally have a very clear story. There's also the specificity critique, which Matt Iglesias and the only 2 House Democrats to flip seats we'll get to later today, which Greg Landsman touched on earlier as well. Many of the problems with the specificity is those same friends that the senator just mentioned, right? Making it hard for people to get specific. And then the third critique is scale. And a lot of the problem with scale is philanthropy, is the marketplace that drives not only dollars, but also now attention. And that attention and those dollars can go to things that are polarizing, or they can go towards supporting the leaders that we're all hearing from today. Senator Gallego is the only senator to ever win on the same ballot in a state that Trump won by 5+ points. We have the majority of those people here today. So, is this a new problem? Right. Is critiques and attacks and coordinated efforts against what is in the mainstream, is this new? No. Right. So thinking about this problem, we have to root ourselves in our history as a party. So Elaine Kmark is an author of The Politics of Evasion, 1989, quite a while ago. And what she says here, one of the oldest myths is that Democrats lose because they've strayed from liberal orthodoxy. The facts, however, do not sustain the allegation. And that's one of the things that we've set out to build, not against, but build to have those facts be heard as loudly. 2006, when we first started looking at districts that Trump won to focus on recruiting candidates in those districts, we drew a lot of inspiration from a 2006 documentary called Housequake. And Housequake follows a bunch of Democrats seeking to win back seats. And one of the lines from that movie is a TV guy who gets up and he says basically what we heard immediately after the 2024 presidential election. Will Democrats decide to win? Or will they focus on what they're focused on in the base? From 1989 to 2006 to today, the market's changed. And depolarizing has not gotten any easier. So we can see here a bubble chart. I guess we are kind of like consulting-ish in a way, but a bubble chart going from 2000, when at the top of the y-axis, almost a third of seats were considered competitive, down to the present day when it's considered less than 10%. At the same time, in constant dollars, the market of congressional politics has grown from $2 billion to $5 billion, and then rapidly $10 billion, $17 billion. That's a lot of money to hire a lot of former senators, staffers, and friends, right? And this is just the electoral dollars, not even these other dollars. Some of that money, some of that energy does go to intentional polarization. And we think in our party and the progressive movement, the vast majority of people are not intentional polarizers. Right? This is not representative, but it is real. And so we do need to articulate that it is real. And this is funded by the heiress of a company that is very expensive to go to their theme parks. And they were here last year for the Omnicause. And this is philanthropy. This is oligarchy. This is polarization very intensely. The founder of the group that funds last year's protesters, they're very explicit about this. My favorite line here is the last line. Very impactful, these activists. Kind of sounds like Star Wars. Their focus for Senator Manchin was not giving him any peace. Just psychological warfare. Well-funded, professionalized polarization, bordering on harassment. And it works. Very effective, these activists. There are people who would be holding Trump districts and running again and again and again. Very effective, these activists. So these are the intentional polarizers. But again, it's not the majority of any faction of the Democratic Party. We have to be clear about that. This is not a hitting. This is a reality. Those intentional polarizers do what good entrepreneurs do. They identify assets beyond their control that can be deployed against their aims. So in 2017, who remembers all the donations to the Muslim, after the Muslim ban, ACLU, et cetera, right? This is a New York Times article. Right. Donations surge, tens and tens of millions of dollars of donations. Celebrities, entrepreneurs, people who wanted to fight back against Trump's extremism in 2016 trusted the brand name organizations and entrepreneurs who had a lot of energy and already had a really big footprint. They had the digital firm that could run the ads. Right? They had the philanthropic staff who could do the development work to reach out, to prospect. Right? And where did that money go? A lot of it went to core mission, of course. And I think those of you who've read some of the articles about the staff difficulties, board versus executives, executives versus staff, know that it was very challenging to be a nonprofit leader, and still is. Everybody knows the ACLU questionnaire now that ran in hundreds of millions of dollars of ads against Kamala Harris. Joe Biden and Amy Klobuchar did not fill that questionnaire out. So what did the ACLU's fundraising explosion go towards? Negative ads, mail and digital, in South Carolina ahead of the presidential primary to enforce the mandate to fill out those questionnaires. And we spend a lot of time, and there's a lot of good tweets and Substacks, and we've been part of that, talking about the tip of the iceberg, right? What's above the iceberg? The questionnaire, a little bit the enforcement. But this is, we're all on, not even the Titanic, rowboats kind of going into these waters, and they haven't gone anywhere. These accidental polarizers, these small dollar donors, these people who responded to the ads you get on Instagram or Facebook or in the middle of a New York Times article asking you to donate to organizations like the ACLU, we all know that's rife in electoral politics as well, in direct political electoral philanthropy. 15 billion text messages in the last cycle. 41 million per day. Right? People are pummeled. And it's going towards polarizing us even more. It is not predominantly going to the depolarizers that we know can win durable majorities. This also is not a factional-driven issue. It's a vagary of a highly inefficient ecosystem with hundreds, maybe even thousands of different political committees, consulting firms, people that are running startups. These candidates, the next two candidates who are coming up here, they've both been very, very successful in their private careers, private sector careers. But starting this complex new business, it's a very challenging thing. And the candidates who are the most depolarizing, who are focused on flipping these districts, are oftentimes in the toughest position to do something about it. It's the people in the safe seats. It's the scam packs. It's the people that can think long term who are able to make the big investments in the marketplace of dollars and attention. So if we look at the first half of the first 6 months of this cycle, only 1/10 of the money went to where we would all think it should go, to those depolarizing candidates in very difficult districts. And it's not just that's not to say all this money is wasted, but the market favors the large, long-term players who can invest the hundreds of thousands of dollars a month or a quarter to buy new data and run the ads, et cetera. And in the aggregate, this is a big problem for the party. So Republican direct dollars to candidates disproportionately goes right in the middle, these seats that are even on partisanship, these red dots. Democratic money, a lot skewing towards safer and safer seats, which makes sense. It's hard to compete with someone who's been building up a list and running ads for many years. The nature of the materials and the language that the 10.1 million active Democratic donors receive is also pretty challenging. So let's look at Marie Gluesenkamp-Perez, a fundraising email from her, versus from one of these PACs. And these are just literally copied, right? So it's even green versus red, right? Substantive versus outrage, right? Truth versus literal fiction. This is not 200% match, that's illegal, right? And this is the marketplace, another manifestation of a polarizing philanthropic marketplace. It's rage, and that's the kind of short term called the tragedy of the common texts, right? We have incentives for every individual actor. Sometimes it's literally to make money for the middlemen. Oftentimes it's just to meet a goal that's set for a candidate over a month or a quarter. And this has been building and building and building and building for a decade. And we think a lot about how it's rational for each individual entity, but then irrational in the aggregate, wildly inefficient in the aggregate. But we're also in a place where the party, the literal party, is as polarizing as you can get. When we looked at this, we thought from that nonprofit, from that philanthropic standpoint, this is good for the metrics and bad for the mission, right? I mean, if you're at a nonprofit and you got some social media goals, not at the DNC, but at a lot of these nonprofits, you have to hit your grant metrics, right? You got a quarterly grant metric, views. Everybody wants views. Everybody wants hits, right? 44 million views. This is probably great for the metrics. Does anybody think this is good for the Democratic Party's mission? Or for our country? This is where partisan centrists have been for quite a while. Seeing this grow and grow and grow to the point where the formal Democratic Party isn't just sending that tweet, right? They're fundraising off it. They're going on Midas Touch and other new media platforms about it. Right? And we have been in, I think, what we think of as and this is one of many things we've learned from the left, the ambition feasibility paradox. Our problems are huge. Right? So many of you who've been in this room last year, the year before, and the smaller rooms before that, right? We're like, well, we need small donors, we need big donors, we need policies, we need messaging, we need talent pipelines, we need staff, we need groups focused on it. The challenge felt enormous. A lot of good groups doing a lot of really good work, but the challenge feels enormous. And sometimes it feels like things that are feasible don't have that big of an impact. But entrepreneurs, particularly on the left, have done an incredible job at figuring out how to align feasible, short-term impact towards things that are incredibly ambitious. And for us, it's learning from it and building, right? Not tearing down. One of my favorite lines is from Elizabeth Warren. It's 2017. She's at a university town in Western Massachusetts. She's giving her stump. And a student raised their hand and is like, can you really cancel my student debt? That doesn't, this is back when that seemed totally infeasible. And Warren's reply was that the Tea Party hadn't taken down Obamacare, but they got stronger and stronger and stronger every time they tried. So getting into these fights is like a muscle or battery. Oh my God, I've said that 1,000 times. How did I screw that up? Getting into these fights is not like a battery. I think that might have been a Freudian slip, because for those of us that have spent a lot of time in centrist rooms, it does feel like we only have so much money, we only have so much time, we only have so many races we can do. But the healthy entrepreneurial ecosystem approach is, it's a muscle. It's a muscle. I see people that have worked on different races, and even ones that fell short, right? The muscle got stronger. We got bigger. We got better. We learned. And that's one of many things we need to learn from the left. And thinking about where to build. So, one of the programs we're very excited about working with a bunch of different partners on this cycle is around those small dollar donations, around those digital ads, those text messages, about the opportunity to not only in the short term direct resources to the candidates who need it most, but in the long term, treat those 10 million donors like the depolarizing assets, the fabric, the parts of a community that they should be. If we look at, this is from the last midterm, moderate PACs, a bunch of the people here today, spent more than progressives and the core progressive PACs, but we spent about 1/30 on digital ads, list acquisition, et cetera. And this just aggregates and builds and builds and builds. So we need to build together, to continue building together. These are other groups, these are our partners presenting today, presenting this gathering. But the rest of the year also working together to build up those muscles. And when I look here, that paper from 1989, PPI was founded in 1989, but they've also incubated and helped grow the Center for New Liberalism. Third Way, 2005, they just launched the Moderate Power Project 2 years ago. Right, there we go. Woo-woo. And Bigger Tent Initiative, new over the last year, right, and already diving into really core work. New Dems and Blue Dogs, the mid-90s. But last year, the Blue Dogs, on this day, launched a whole new venture to take things to the next level. Right? New Dems have continued investing really heavily. Yeah, give it up. New Dems, Blue Dogs, let's go. All right. Right. I think the overlap of New Deal leaders, Next 50, collaborating together, actually going together to the market to find, saying, hey, we're going to double down, we're going to go bigger, and Debbie Cox Bolton being here for the first time makes me very, very happy. States Forum, Inclusive Abundance, launched a year ago, already up to 14 staff. This is how we do it. We do it by doing it. We don't complain about the donors, right, or wish other people would stop doing what they're doing, right? We have to build ourselves. All right, so I'm wearing a Heath Schuler Tennessee jersey, not as recognizable as Manchin from last year. But he was one of the candidates featured in the 2006 Housequake documentary. And we talked at the beginning about some of these challenges for our community, some of these critiques that are made against us. And one of them that intersects across the story and across policy specificity, is the idea that many Democrats are just following the polls, right? That actually winning is not the moral high ground. Because if you're only focused on winning, are you really standing for something? I think we don't have to tease all that out today. But this line from Housequake is one of my favorites. It's his campaign manager talking. He says, Heath is very consistent in his beliefs with the vast majority of people living here. He actually believed those things,